Hi, hello, everybody. Thank you for clicking on the Truthful Ministry podcast. I don't know where you're at, but right now for me, it is so hot outside. Oh my goodness. I'm talking about the type of weather where I walked outside, immediately start sweating. I had to change shirts before I even got in here because I have a black car, and so it is just it's like an oven in there, right? Drove from my house to the church, 15-minute drive, and I'm like cooking. And so I hope the weather is faring you a little bit better today. But this is technically episode 0 of the Truthful Ministry podcast. And that's just because what I kind of want to do going forward is a little bit different than what I'll be doing here. I hope to have a lot more guests on this couch with me. I've already filmed one episode of the podcast, actually with my first guest, Carson, and it went really well. But this one, I just wanted to make sure I had just sort of an episode that you all could listen to or watch where I just explain kind of the goal of the podcast and kind of what I'm doing. And if you don't know who I am or you don't know me, you haven't been able to click on any of my other videos yet or get to know me or my story, I wanted to kind of wrap that up here and also explain my goals for the podcast and what we're going to be doing and why I'm even doing this in the first place and what I'll be talking about with my guests going forward. So what I'm going to talk about first is just, again, who I am, me. My name is Jonathan Lynn Heidenreich Jr., but I've gone by Johnny my whole life. And obviously on here, I'm Truthful Minister or Truthful Ministry, whatever, I don't know, Minister of Truth. I made that back in like the beginning of college, and I've just kind of stuck with it. But just some other things about me, and I have this paper that I'm going to go off of. Big nerd. I play Dungeons and Dragons with my friends sometimes, but I just love fantasy movies. I loved all the Marvel stuff, at least before Endgame. That was all really good, and then everything after Endgame's been kind of meh. But I love superheroes. I've always been a big superhero person. Like I said, I play Dungeons and Dragons. I like the Hobbit movies. I like those more than Lord of the Rings for sure, which I know that people who apparently have read the books, they say that the Lord of the Rings movies they're actually better than the Hobbit, and they don't like the Hobbit as much because of the way they changed it. I've never read the books. I don't read a lot of books other than the Bible. And so it didn't really faze me that much, but I thought the Hobbit was sick, and I thought the Lord of the Rings was a snooze fest. What else? I play video games sometimes on my other channel if you ever watch Truthful Gaming, but I like a lot of nerdy stuff, but at the same time, I'm also an athlete. I've been an athlete my whole life. So in high school, I played basketball almost every day. Legit, almost every day we were balling. It didn't matter whether it was raining or snowing or if it was 90 degrees outside, tornado warning. We were at the local park and we were hooping. And so I played basketball a lot then. I played golf. My dad's a big golfer, and so he always brought me to the golf course, played a lot of golf. I think in high school that was about it. I tried everything though. I played a little bit of tennis. I just never competed or anything. I just love sports. I love being outside. I love competing. I'm very competitive. But when I got to college, my sophomore year was my first year ever playing soccer in my life. I walked onto the soccer team, and so at D2 school, I played goalkeeper for a bit. I didn't ever actually play, and it had no PT. Let me throw that out there. But I was just a practice keeper, and I really loved it, man. I ran every 120 I was told to. I got in the goal, and I was taking shots from these guys who had been kicking since they got out of the womb, and I held my own, and I loved that. So I loved playing soccer. That was a good challenge for 3 years, my last 3 years of college. I loved playing soccer. So I've always been an athlete. I'm very competitive. I love music. Dude, I love music. I love, just the story behind music and what it makes you feel. I love how every song, or at least good songs, have a kind of a story and emotion. And so I love music, man. I'm always listening to music. I wrote on here that I'm a homie, and so we'll talk about that going forward. But I'm a homie. I love, my friends are just so important to me, and so a big part of my life is just how involved I am in the lives of my friends. I celebrate with them. We mourn together, all that. Just I'm very involved with my friends. I'm an extrovert, and so I'm someone who gets their energy from being with other people. I love being with people. I could be with people all day, especially my best friends. And I often say that my best friends are like my family, and I really mean it when I say that. God has really put important people into my life, and that's one of the reasons why I want to do this podcast. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Let me see what else I wrote on here. Oh, dude, I wrote one thing I did, again, talking about music. I was in choir for 3 days, so you can tell I'm somebody who just likes to try everything. I like to try stuff. I'm just a go-getter. I'm an adventurer, but I was in choir for 3 days until I learned that there was going to be a lot of meetings and we were going to have to do all these performances, and it was just going to take up a lot of time, and I was like, I don't have the time for this. I was in college. I was already playing soccer. I already had a job, classes. I was like, I can't really afford to also do also do choir right now. I'm a very opinionated person. My friends know that about me. I'm a person who does not mind to argue one bit, and I will go all day, all night. I love to argue. I love board games. Yeah, so that's a little bit more about me. Let's talk about why I want to do the podcast. If you haven't heard my story, I wasn't raised in a Christian home. And so growing up for 16 years, I didn't really know Jesus or didn't really know the Lord or like what he did for me. But 16 years in, God put someone in my life that invited me to church, and they showed me just the love of Christ. Like I could tell that this person was different. And so I started asking them, obviously, like, like, how are you so happy? All this stuff. And it was the first person I ever felt like I could open up to. Like I had friends, like I said, I would go play basketball all the time with my friends, but I just wanted like what I felt like people had in the TV shows. Like I wanted that deep, like just the people that you could cry in front of, the people that you could be happy with, the people that would come over to your house and they could walk through your door and like your parents wouldn't even say anything. Like, you know what I mean? I just wanted something deeper. I wanted something different and real. And I felt like I had that with this person. And so they showed me the love of Christ and took me to church. And after 5 months of going to church, I was baptized and saved, and I haven't looked back since. And I've known that I wanted to do ministry pretty quickly after that. About a year into like my faith, I kind of felt like I knew that God was calling me to ministry to some degree. But that being said, one of the things I wanted most before I was a Christian was that friendship. And so not only did God bring me to him through someone, through like a good friend, but since then, since I've been brought to Christ and through church, God has blessed me with the most amazing people. Like I thank God genuinely every night in my prayers for the amazing people he's brought into my life. And so in thinking about the possibility of making like a podcast, or what could I do, what could I say to just people my age, things like that, and knowing that I wanted to do some sort of media and put myself on a platform somewhere, like what could I do, like what tools has God given me? And it's like, what better tools than just the wonderful people that God has brought into my life. And so one of the goals I have with this podcast is to just take all the amazing people that God has brought into my life and all the things that they've taught me, and just be able to share that with the world or with whoever God happens to bring to click on these videos or these podcasts. But like my best friends, especially like the first one I said, Carson. Carson's like a brother to me, and we get pretty deep on there. We talk about the highs and the lows. But I have other friends that have just taught me so many other things. I want to have my friend Matthew on here, who's the worship pastor at our church, and I just want to have him talk about his experience and just all the wonderful things that God has taught me and all the ways that I've been blessed through people. And so I'm a people person. That's another thing about me. I just love people. Like every job I've worked has to some degree involved like customer care or like talking with people. Like, don't get me wrong, sometimes people are dumb and it's annoying. Like, but you just gotta laugh at it. And so I love just hearing people's stories, and I love hearing the different experiences people have had and things like that. And so I've just been so blessed, and I wanted to share it through this means with the world to some degree. Just all the awesome stories that I've heard and all of the awesome ways that again I've been blessed by different people. So that's kind of the main goal. And that's how the first dozen or so episodes of this are going to go. I don't know who I'm going to be able to get on here and when, but it'll mostly be me talking with one of my friends or one of my mentors, someone important from my life, and just what they've taught me. And then another goal I have is one day, obviously, like if enough people are watching these and wanting more, I would love to do like things where I answer y'all's questions. Like I would love to have people answer or ask us questions. Tell me what topics you want to hear about, and then I can think about the people that God has put in my life that relate to that question. Like if you have a question about anxiety, I can think, okay, well, who in my life could I bring on to talk about that with me, or who in my life could talk about relationships, things like that. God has just given me again so many wonderful people. Like I love where I live. I've got a guy when my car breaks down. I have a guy that I can call when I have computer issues. I've got a guy I can call when I need camera help. I've got this girl I can call. Like I've got a person for everything. Like God has given me just so many wonderful people, and so I would love to be more interactive with just whoever listens to these or whoever watches, and just be able to answer you all's questions or bring people on. Yeah, and one day at some point I want to do like some sort of vlog thing. Like I just love my life again so much with these people that I'm going to have on this podcast that if people are interested, I'd love to do like just vlogs of us going on trips together, or when we have like our board game nights or something, just do random little vlogs, things like that. But the main thing is I just want to be more interactive with my audience or my congregation, whoever watches these, whatever you want to call it. But I would love to do that. I don't want to be someone who just kind of posts and then never says anything or never interacts with people who comment or the listeners. I want to hear what you all want. So feel free to comment. Dude, also prayer requests, I'm big on that, dog. Like if you're going through something, you can just drop a comment like on the YouTube video and just kind of ask us for prayer, things like that. But I just want to be really interactive. That's a big goal. And also, I just want to encourage other people. One, through the different stories. Like, I'll kind of do two things at once here because I have this as another bullet point. But part of being the Truthful Ministry podcast is what does it mean to be truthful? Well, it means to just be open and honest and be truthful. Like, exactly like it means dropping the mask, like not being somebody else. But whenever we sit down on this couch, we're gonna be fully open and honest, and that means talking about the good times, but also talking about the bad times, and talking about the ways we've struggled or the times maybe we've doubted and how we got through that, and just not pretending like everything's perfect. And so I think part of the beauty of that truth is that everyone can relate to some degree. Like if you're out there and you're struggling with whatever it is right now, like you have to know you're not alone. Like there have been people that have struggled with that before. And so part of the Truthful Ministry podcast is also that, just bringing people on to just show the honesty and just to be real, because I don't think there's enough of that in our world today. I think a lot of people, the second they get put in front of a camera, they kind of act like they have it all together. Everybody's told to smile, you're told to look your best, you put on the makeup, and then you don't want to talk about that time that you were crying in the corner and you didn't want to talk to anybody. You don't want to talk about that time where you had doubts. You don't want to talk about that time where you were in college and you used to make those mistakes. Like, people try to just dust that away, and I think that's not good. I think it's better to be open and honest and just learn from that together, because you never know who it could help that's hearing it. But also it's just about being real. Like, you don't have to pretend like you're perfect. I think that's just such a huge weight, and I think that people don't realize how big that weight is until it's finally gone. It's kind of like, again, I always say, as someone who wasn't raised in the church, it's like I lived my life and I thought it was totally normal, and obviously I was sad a lot and I was doubting like who I was, and I was trying to fit in and all this stuff, but I thought I lived a decently normal life. And then I found Jesus. And after about a year or so of the Jesus stuff, I was like, dang, how did I even make it those 16 years? Like, during those 16 years, I thought it was fine. But once I found Jesus and life was changed forever, I was like, how was I making it? And so in that same way, you get that realization. I think that being able to finally drop that mask and being able to say like, okay, I'm going to stop pretending to be perfect. I'm going to stop pretending to have it all together. Like, I'm going to just be open and honest, and I'm going to face whatever my past, or I'm going to face the thing that I'm dealing with and talk to somebody about it. Just that sort of thing, taking that weight off. You don't realize how big of a deal that is until it's finally off your shoulders. And so I really want to encourage people to just be open and honest, and through whatever struggle they're going through, encourage them that like it's going to be okay and that God is still good. I think hearing stories of how awesome God has been in the lives of like my friends or me, it can just be so encouraging, because it's like, hey, here's someone who was also just like struggling. Here's someone who was also just going through it. Here's someone who made some mistakes, but look how God has still redeemed them. Look how God has still used them. And so I think there's just so much beauty in that. And again, I have been so blessed in my life to have heard so many different stories that involve that, and I've watched people that I'm close to just go through things and get out on the other side, and I'm just so blessed in that regard that I just wanted to be able to share it here. So part of the truthful aspect of Truthful Ministry is being open and honest, but it also means sometimes being truthful. Sometimes the truth is hard. Like, sometimes the truth isn't what you want to hear, but it's still the truth. Like, Jesus says that he is, what's on my PC right now? Jesus says that he is the truth, the way, the life, and so there's one truth. Like, anything else that's not him, anything else that is not the truth is the false, if that makes sense. And so part of the Truthful Ministry podcast is speaking the truth. And that means that there are a lot of things in this world that people today kind of get twisted, or they choose to say, well, this is my truth, or things like that. But sometimes we need to hear the truth, and we need to be kind of put back on the right path. And so part of the Truthful Ministry podcast is going to be like speaking against kind of our culture in a way, and how there are some things that I think our culture really accepts or really pushes us towards, that the Bible, that as Christians we would say like that's not okay, like that's not the truth. The truth is you shouldn't be going to that place. The truth is you shouldn't be doing these things. The truth is it does matter whether or not you go to church on Sunday mornings. The truth is it does matter who you talk to. The truth is it does matter what you watch on your computer. The truth is it does matter who you're in a relationship with and who you let into your life, that sort of thing. And so I think, again, like just not just in my life, but also in the people that I'm going to have on this couch, I think we've covered a lot of bases. I have people who, everybody's different, but at the same time, we all often go through a lot of the similar struggles. And so I've been blessed with so many different types of people in my life that I've seen a lot of different variations of struggles and mistakes and things that God has been able to redeem people through. And so who better to talk about, hey, God says that this isn't okay, or here's something that I learned, than people who have lived it. And that's another reason why, obviously, I don't want to just have me on the podcast or just do a solo podcast, but I want to have other people so I can say, hey, here's somebody who's lived this. Like, here's this biblical truth, and I know it might be hard to hear, but take it from this person who has lived it and made those mistakes, and now you can see, like, God doesn't want you to do this for these reasons. Like, look how poor it could have turned out, but look how God still used this person, that sort of thing. And I think there's just not enough of that out there. And I think also, even, I'm going to say something crazy. I think even sometimes there are some people who would say they're Christians, and maybe they're just Sunday churchgoers, but maybe they also have some sort of platform like this, like a podcast, or maybe they're even a pastor on a stage somewhere, and they get it wrong. That happens. Like Jesus even tells us, it's in John chapter 2 where it says that there are people who hear the miracles that Jesus does, or they see it and they believe, but it says Jesus would not trust them. It's like, what? Like, there are people who can believe that Jesus was the Messiah. They believed what he was saying, that he was God. They believed in God, but he doesn't trust them. Like, how is that possible? And it's because I think Jesus understands that people can get it wrong. And so part of speaking the truth is saying, like, hey, I see that you're a believer. I know that you're watching this podcast, and I hope that you're going to church. I hope you believe. I hope you've been reading your Bible, all that. But sometimes we can get it twisted. And so maybe, hey, even I can get it twisted. And so it's important to be reading your Bible on your own and just praying and talking to people who you find that are wise and trustworthy, and testing the spirits to see if it's from God or not, that sort of thing. But I think part of the Truthful Ministry podcast, again, to wrap that point up, is just speaking against culture a lot of the time and just kind of correcting things and just being open and honest, even if it's kind of hard to hear sometimes. But conviction is a good thing. I think we talked about that actually in our church recently on a Sunday morning. But I've always said that, like, conviction is a good thing. It's that little voice in the back of your head that says, hey, the thing you're doing is probably kind of wrong. It's probably shouldn't be doing this. Like, this is separating you from God. And that's obviously not a good thing. We want to be close to God. We want to go closer to him. We want to have a relationship with him. And so conviction is important because it's the Holy Spirit telling us, hey, that thing you're about to do, it's going to separate you from God. And so we feel bad and we feel a little nervous, or sometimes you can feel guilty. And people don't like feeling guilty. Like, feeling convicted, it doesn't feel good, but it's important. I think it's just like, a blacksmith or a silversmith, as the Bible says sometimes, like, you have to take a hammer to the silver to straighten it out and to make it good, that sort of thing. And the conviction is like that sort of, that hitting, the Holy Spirit hitting you and saying, like, hey, this was wrong. I'm going to straighten you out, like, please. And so you can either choose to listen to it and say, okay, God, like, I understand what I was doing was wrong. Or sometimes people, whether it's out of stubbornness or anger or sadness, I don't know, sometimes people can say, like, well, I'm going to keep doing this anyway. Like, I don't like that I can't do this, or I don't like the way this is making me feel. And sometimes even on a Sunday morning, the pastor says something and it's the truth, but it's convicting, and how you choose to respond to that conviction is very important. But I don't want the Truthful Ministry podcast to be a place where we shy away from conviction or things that might be convicting. And so that's part of the truthful aspect of Truthful Ministry is, again, just to wrap all that up, being open and honest, not putting on a mask, not being fake, and also just being willing to say the truth and being willing to say things that might be challenging or convicting. Let's see, what else do I have on here? I guess to say that point too, just the mask of, like, I think there is a pressure, not just the people who are on platforms, but because of that, there's a pressure sometimes, like when you're in school still, or whether you're at your job, there's a pressure to feel perfect. And so the Truthful Ministry podcast is going to be a place where we can, again, take that weight off, and we can feel like we don't have to have perfection here. Like, we can take that pressure away, because I do think there's a pressure for people to feel perfect. And so, yeah, to wrap that up, I want this to be a safe place where there's no pressure. And I also want this to be a place just for me, to help me in my personal life, to just, like, kind of keep me accountable and just keep me in check. Is like, hey, there's a popular phrase where it's like, you can't pour into people if you're not being poured into. Like, you only have so much to give. And so if you're pouring yourself out and you're constantly doing ministry, or you're constantly just trying to help other people, if nobody's helping you, if nobody's pouring into you, if I'm not getting my daily bread, if I'm not getting my word of God in the mornings, if I'm not getting my quiet time, then how am I going to do this? And so taking responsibility and saying, okay, I'm going to take this, God, I'm going to put this on my plate and put the Truthful Ministry podcast on my plate. That's just a way that I can make sure, hey, like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make sure that I keep myself accountable. I'm going to have enough to pour myself out. So just a way to keep myself accountable, and just be a place where people can walk in truth together during challenging times. I'm really excited. I also have something else. I'm going to wrap this up. I have something I'm going to do at the end of every episode of the podcast, but I'm not going to put it at the end. Basically, after every time I have a guest, I'm going to take that guest and we're going to go and do something. And you'll want to stay tuned because at the end of my first season, I don't know, just whenever I feel like there's a good place to stop, once I feel like I've done a good amount of episodes, I'm going to put that all into one episode. So where each guest will have done that thing, I'll edit it together, and that'll be its own episode. But that'll be really fun. That's a surprise I have in store. And I don't know from there. I know Carson, when he was on, he asked me a question at the end. He threw me a curveball. He threw me a surprise question, and that was fun. So I want to have more surprises like that. And I think my catchphrase, it's not really a catchphrase, what's the word? My shtick, my thing that separates me from other podcasts, I don't know. And just being unique in general, but I kind of want to ask a question to every guest. I have it on here. I have in front of me the questions I asked Carson and the questions that I'll ask my second guest, whose name is Cody. I'm going to ask each of them, what is one thing that you feel like the culture today is saying? What's one lie from the enemy is what I'm going to say. Because, again, we're Truthful Ministry podcast, so it's the main thing being truth. I'm going to ask every guest, what's one lie from the enemy that you really want to speak against right now, that you really want to speak truth about? It's mainly kind of targeting toward what's something that you feel like there's a lie from the enemy in our culture today? What's something that you feel like people struggle with, maybe you've struggled with? What's one lie from the enemy that you just want to speak against? And so every guest is going to have a different answer to that, I'm sure, because again, we've all lived different lives, but you'd be surprised if you're listening to the podcast right now, just how much you can relate to. Again, the enemy, he's smart, he's crafty, but I think that the more we come together and are aware of just his plans and his effort, and we see the different patterns of okay, well, here's how this person struggled, here's how this person was lied to, here's how the enemy sort of did battle with me. It's we can learn from that. We can learn from each other because we're not in this alone. We're not in this battle alone. That's a big part of the Truthful Ministry podcast as well, is just God has blessed me again with so many people that I haven't felt alone in a long time, and I'm so blessed because of that I want to make sure other people have just sort of a place of encouragement where they can also not feel alone. And so one thing I'll ask again is always just, what is a lie that you feel like the enemy is speaking that you want to speak against? And I think that'll be really cool. So I think that about wraps it up. Episode 0. I plan on uploading episode 0 at the same time as episode 1 maybe, so that should hopefully be up if you're listening to this. And I'll say this too for my visual watcher people, not my audio listeners, but I got a new fancy camera after I had already recorded the episode with Carson, so this one's going to look a lot cleaner than the episode with Carson. So Carson's episode will look not as high quality, but the sound will be the same. And then once I get Cody on here, I'm actually recording with Cody tomorrow. From Cody on, so episode 2 and on, it'll be this same camera visual quality. So hope you enjoyed. Do I pray? Do I pray us out? I don't know. I don't know if I prayed out with Carson, but I think I'm just going to pray out after I stop recording. I'm going to stop recording and then I'm going to pray for me. But I encourage you to pray. Take a minute and pray. Take everything you've listened to and pray after every episode. Don't just listen to it, say, oh, that was cool, and then walk away. Really try and digest it. Pray about it for a sec and say hey God, this was an awesome podcast. Hopefully you say that. Say, hey God, this was cool to listen to. Just help me to absorb what I need to, Lord. Help me to not just walk away and forget it, but I pray, God, that this is my personal prayer, that the Lord would use this podcast and use me and the wonderful people that He's put in my life as tools to just help someone else out there. Even if I do all this and one person out there gets to watch these and they think, oh, that was dope, that really helped me, it's cool, then I did my part, I guess. So yeah, that's it for episode 0. Hope y'all go enjoy episode number 1.